I think we need a bridge over troubled waters right now. Would you all agree?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you for that rendition of it, because this bridge over troubled waters is not a spiritual bypass we're talking about. It's the holy medicine that this world in crisis needs. And I believe the crisis we have right now is a crisis, a spiritual crisis. Our beautiful contemporary mystic and priest Matthew Fox says, the whole entire problem of the world today, the whole problem, is a loss of the sense of the sacred. And we know what the sacred is. It's our connection to God, or whatever we call the higher power of goodness. We've lost that connection, and we're broken here on this physical plane. And our society and most societies today have become way too secularized. That's not the right way, but that's, you know what I mean. Too physical, too connected to the physical world. And we've forgotten to put God, love first. We're made of love, and our purpose is love. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
That's why we're here. That's why we come here. We're not here to think alike, to be alike, to talk alike. That's not the idea. We're here to love one another as we are. We're all works in progress, and when we remember that, yes, in physical form we're separate beings, but spiritually there is no disconnect. We are one. So when we're pointing the finger at someone else, when we're blaming someone else, we've got three pointing right back at us. We've got to use the holy medicine that is putting God, love first in our lives to heal what's going on right now. Ernest Holmes said, "There is nothing to be healed." There's more. He didn't stop there. He said, there's nothing to be healed, only truth to be revealed. And if you know how our spiritual mind treatment goes, we start with God is all there is, we are one with God, and then we state the truth that we know. And when you work with a practitioner, minister, they will help you move from that troubled water to the bridge which is the truth. Because the truth will set us free. The truth will set us free. Jesus said, "See, it is your faith that made you whole," when he was healing the blind man. It is your faith in something greater that made you whole. Now, Kirk and I got a little message from our daughter this week about troubles, because we were all in troubles. And she said, "I've learned how to deal with trouble. I ask, what would Jesus do? And then I pretend I'm dead and disappear for 3 days." Now, I know that's what we'd all like to do sometimes, hide our head in the sand and do a great big spiritual bypass and go, oh, everything's in God's hands and it's okay, but that's not the way it works. We've got our part to play in this holy medicine. We have things to do. When we get physically ill, we can go to the pharmacy and get some pills to take. We can get antibiotics to heal. We can do some things, or we can go to Mother's or Whole Foods and get some herbs or oil of oregano or something off the shelf and feel good. We can do things for our physical body. But when we are spiritually out of whack, disconnected, there's other things to do. Ernest Holmes says, and I love this, he says, there's peace at the center of everything, not some things, everyone. And when we stop being confused, we can let the peace flow. There is love at the center of everything, not just some things. And when we stop the hating, the love will flow. And there is a life energy, an aliveness at the core of everything. And when we stop being whether ambivalent, and we stop being not caring. When we connect to life, we can let that life energy flow, and we will feel alive and awake, and we can be focused on doing our part. We can be focused on that. You see, the problem isn't with God at all, because that's always there, ever present, eternally. The problem's with us. We create our limitations and blocks to the goodness that's there. We create that problem, and it's not a bad thing, because you and I are here to learn and to grow. And too often, we don't want to talk about our broken parts, right? Well, if you read that beautiful reading in the beginning that was on the screen, but in Debbie Ford's book, she bears her soul. She becomes vulnerable. And this woman who found herself on a filthy, dirty bathroom floor in the hell-created drug addictive state, looking how she'd ruined her life, she didn't stay there. She became a New York Times best-selling author. She led amazing workshops that helped people heal, but she was vulnerable. When her sister Ariel came, for those of you that were here, and Ariel was teaching about wabi-sabi love, about holy relationships, about loving the imperfections in one another, but she came up and she said, you know, I'll tell you, this is how old I am. I weigh this much. And she told all about herself. But she said, until we can be vulnerable with other people, we don't really have a real connection. And I don't know about you, but sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable. You know, we want to be, and none of us are. So, you know, let's just get over that. So I want to talk for a minute about my process to this thing we call the holy medicine, that bridge over all these troubled waters right down here that are more than just a little rough right now. They're really rough. That bridge right now is for us to take a step up in consciousness, to see a bigger, broader picture of the whole thing. And to do that, if we recognize and know there is a mystic inside each of us. And some people go, ooh, what's mystic? Mystic sounds too woo-woo out there. Well, a mystic transcends all cultures, religions, faiths, everything. And it's every person from every single faith walk of life that believes in their oneness with what they call God. They believe in their oneness. And when they open to that oneness, something bigger, they can live in a different way than just reacting to the things that are happening to this world. Because I'll tell you, do you feel beaten up sometimes? Is only one person feel beaten up about the world sometimes? The world can beat us up if we're looking at it from this plane right here. But if we take that higher path, the mystical viewpoint, we realize, yes, there is pain and suffering in this physical world, because that's how we learn and grow. But there's so much more going on. And it's the ability to see the bigger picture. And there's a mystic in us. And that mystic knows, about intuitive living, instinctual living, knows about deeper knowing, that there's always something more than we see with our physical eye or hear with our physical ear. There's something more going on. So that's the first step. To be a mystic, you just have to be aware that there's something more. That's pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
Can you guys do that? There's something more. There's a power greater than we are that we can use, and that power is good. We can agree on that one. It's the second part of being a mystic, so that it's tough. It's really tough. It's the purgation part, where we have to own our limitations, our faults. We have to own them to be responsible. Ernest Holmes says in his book, New Design for Living, I want you to look in the mirror, own your faults and your limitations, and say, you're right, I did it. I created those limitations. I'm judging the faults. I'm doing it because you know what? There's only one thing we can really, really change and make a huge difference, and that's our thoughts about what's going on. We did it. We have to take responsibility. And when you come up to the prayer wall today, you don't have to feel guilty or ashamed. It's about just owning, I'm learning. We have to, okay, here's what I did, and then we have to convert those faults and limitations into great big lessons. So we can realize I'm growing, I'm learning, and we can, in Catholicism, they have confessional booths. And they ask people to check their sins every day. Well, sins, we used to say sins are just missing the mark, where we didn't do the highest and best thing. So every day. And in Judaism, the holiest day of the entire year is the Day of Atonement. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the biggest steps in the 12 steps is taking a fearless moral inventory. A fearless moral inventory. Because once we can own our faults, we realize there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets through. We can realize that, okay, that may seem like a huge mistake, a huge problem, oh no, but that's how we can have a greater understanding and experience. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
It's okay for all of us to get down on our knees and stomp and be angry. It's okay to even be angry with God. Has anybody here been angry with God? I remember sitting at my minister's desk, sobbing my eyes out because I couldn't figure out how a good person could have such a horrible experience. And I remember she was crying too and just saying, I don't get it all the time either. And it's okay. It's okay not to know. The very first step in growing is to claim your anger, your frustration, your resentment, your faults. Claim them, because we have to see what we're working with. And then, just as Pam talked about in her reading, we have to forgive. We have to forgive, because it starts with the claiming, oh my gosh, oops. The bridge is the holy medicine, which says we grow through our mistakes. We grow through our problems, and we're not to live in guilt and shame. When we do better, we know better. And it's time to It's time to know better and do better. We need to come together. Now, the third stage of mysticism is the illumination, and that's when you really feel that connection. And that's why we come here and we do all our spiritual work. We do our meditation, our contemplation, our prayers. We do our sacred reading. We do our circles and our connections, because we want to feel illuminated by the truth, the greater truth, something more. And when we come together in community, it can make it happen. It can make it happen. That illumination is so important. And then we can take any of the problems that we feel and turn them into gifts, things we share, things we do. I want to share with you a couple of people right now. There's some people in the Old Testament who are very old, but they still speak the very truth. And some very contemporary people who speak the very truth, the same language, because truth is truth. You and I, first and foremost, as I said, need to stop pointing the finger. And it was Isaiah, who's widely revered as one of the greatest prophets in the Old Testament, or the greatest prophets ever, whose name means salvation of the Lord. He said, you can call God by name and God will come to you. Always, boom, like that. You know, we say that to you. Take one step towards spirit, one step towards spirit, one step towards spirit, and it comes rushing in to help you, because the universe is always for us. Just say that. The universe is always for us. It is never against us. So we have to be facing in the right direction. If we're looking this way, we're not going to see the good that's going on. Well, Isaiah says, God will come to you, but you have to stop pointing your finger and speaking evil. That's what we have to do. We have to look in that mirror and say, I did it. I pointed my finger. I spoke evil. Oops, I forgot. I didn't do my best. I didn't take my holy medicine today. I forgot. But I can do better. And then Isaiah says, after you do that, then you will rise up from the darkness. Then you will step over all the stuff going on and see something greater. That's what we need to do. Now, there's a woman who was born in Los Angeles in January 1919. And she passed away. She lived a very long life, but she had a really lot to do. She died in July 2010, and her name was Jean Knudsen Hoffman. And she was a Quaker peace activist. But she was so many other things. My goodness, she was a Quaker peace activist, a pastoral counselor, a workshop facilitator, a poet, a columnist, an author, and mother of 7 children. Do you see why she had to live a long time to get all that done? Woo! Well, she went to study with Thich Nhat Hanh, and she loved his consciousness of compassionate listening. And she started a project, a foundation called the Compassionate Listening Foundation. And I want to share here because this actually, I felt, it's when you get the God bumps all over and know that it's truth. She said, we must learn to listen to both sides of any conflict before we take action. That was her motivation. But she said, the Passionate Listening Project's motto is, an enemy is one whose story we have not heard yet. But she goes on. She said, the call as I see it is for us to see that within all life is the mystery, God, within all life. By compassionate listening, we may awaken it and thus learn the partial truth the other is carrying. For we each carry some portion of the truth. Does that give you the God bumps? Every person carries a piece of the truth. And when we come together and listen, think what we could do. When we can listen to this person and their story and share our story and listen and take the truth and weave it together, think how much greater it can be. Do you think that might be holy medicine? The holy medicine of compassionate listening. That we each, what if you looked at people around you, woke up every day, first of all, on Matthew Fox, and looked at the sacredness of all life everywhere, and then made a commitment to know that every person you stand in front of or stand next to or stand by has a piece of the truth. It may not be the same truth you have. It may be totally different, but a piece of it. They don't have all of it, but a piece of it. How different would the world be? Can you think of that? If we looked at people that way, that we all hold something sacred and special in us. Wow. Wow. So when we have our prayer wall today, the final step, and there's a step right there. The 4th step is not one I really want to talk about, the dark night of the soul, because I think we might be living that. So I'm going to jump over that one. But the last part of the mystical journey, the most unbelievable part, is the absolute union with God when you realize you are here to do God's work, love's work, joy's work, beauty's work, whatever it is, that's what we're here to do. And that's the final step of mysticism. It doesn't mean that you always live there, but when you fall, you get up a lot faster. So as we create our prayer wall today, and I have our ministers and our practitioners come forward, and do start in the middle and go out, because sometimes we have practitioners and ministers. So come on up now. As those of you that are seated, I want you to think today, what are you willing to heal so that you can be a messenger, a blessing for goodness? What are you willing to heal and take responsibility for? I heal my judgment today. I heal my lack of forgiveness today. I heal, and let our beautiful practitioners and ministers be here to know the truth for you, because what will the truth do? Set you free. So come on up, come on down. have your question here, your knowing. We have already established, of course, God is all there is and we are one with God. So just come forward. Beautiful practitioners and ministers are finishing their prayers, may we all join together in a prayer of healing and a prayer of love for all those involved at the synagogue in Pennsylvania, those with family and friends that have been lost, praying and healing the trauma, praying for all that were involved in the whole ordeal that is a representation just of the division in our country right now, in our world right now. And may we know that as we uplift our minds and hearts, that we are healed and a healer. We are blessed and a blessing. That we uplift our consciousness and our thoughts to be a vehicle of light, of love, to accept and receive the holy medicine of Spirit and be the distributor of the holy medicine of love. We know right now in this and every moment that God's Spirit, infinite intelligence, is so very good that every problem holds its answer. And we see, as we choose to step forward and do our part, that we make a difference to heal